And then we'll do some prayers, and then we'll pick up where we left off yesterday. Okay, so first get comfortable in your meditation posture. So sitting cross-legged on your cushion, your torso and spine straight, erect, but balanced, not tight. So sometimes it helps to kind of shift to the right and left and forward and back and find where you're balanced. So you're not falling forward or falling back or falling to the right or left. And then put your hands in your lap, right hand on top of on the left, the tips of the thumbs touching, and resting on your lap just in front of your navel. And the shoulders broad and open. And take a few deep breaths. As you could imagine, as you exhale any tension or stress or discomfort flowing out of your body and absorbing into the ground. And as you inhale, very invigorating, relaxing energy coming in, filling your lungs and filling your entire body. So let your gaze rest at about a 45-degree angle down, focus down towards the ground, about 1 meter in front of you. But then without looking at anything specifically, kind of retract your focus of your vision, so that your vision is just resting unfocused in the space in front of you. And let your jaws, your jaw, your lips and teeth just rest in a natural position. And then usually when we're meditating, just gently press the tip of the tongue against the roof of the mouth, just behind your front teeth. And keep the mouth from drying out. So just spend a few minutes focusing on your breath, trying to let go of distracting thoughts. Bringing your attention to rest just on this simple object, on your breath, without wavering. So then take a minute to generate a positive motivation. So think about what we're going to do in the next couple hours. Discuss, think about, meditate on the Buddha's teachings. So what's the reason? Why do you want to do this? What's your reason for wanting to do this? So try to generate the most positive possible reason. One way is to generate the mind of love, wishing that by engaging in this practice, then may I bring about the welfare, the happiness, and well-being of myself and all sentient beings. Or generate a mind of compassion, thinking by engaging in this practice, may I reduce and eliminate the suffering of myself and all sentient beings. And if you like, you can even try to generate the attitude of Bodhicitta, thinking in order to do this, bring about the welfare and eliminate the suffering of all sentient beings, I myself must become a fully enlightened Buddha. Therefore, I engage in this practice of listening to the Dharma. Okay, so with the positive motivation, then we'll read a few preliminary prayers on page 73 in the prayer book. There's a praise to Shantideva on page 73. Page 73. And you have to go back. 73. Okay, so there's a praise to Shantideva. The first part, the first 1, 2, 3 verses would be 3 times, and then the rest just once. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the founder of the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one gone beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate and make offerings and go for refuge. When, O supreme amongst humans, you were born on this earth, you placed out 7 strands and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies, formed supremely pure, wisdom ocean, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, Lord, to you I prostrate. With the supreme science, fate like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. Thus 3 like you, the 3 worlds are not, incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. Savior having great compassion, the founder having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean, to you the one gone to thusness I prostrate. The purity that frees one from attachment, the virtue that frees one from the lower realms, the one path to sublime pure reality, to the Dharma that pacifies I prostrate. Those who are liberated and who also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community intending virtue I prostrate. Homage to the Supreme Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to all 3 ever devout homage, to all worthy of respect, bowing with bodies as many as all realms atoms in all aspects. With supreme faith I pay homage. Do not commit any unvirtue. virtuous actions. Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a visual aberration, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of light in a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may saintly beings attain the rank of all seeing, subdue the false thoughts, and be delivered from samsara's ocean, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. The Heart of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. I prostrate to the Arya Triple Gem. Thus did I hear at one time the Bhagwan was dwelling on Mass of Vulture's Mountain in Rajgriha, together with a great community of monks and a great community of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in a concentration on the categories of phenomena of profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva Mahasattvacharyāvatāra looked upon the very practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, and beheld those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva Mahasattvacharyāvatāra: how should any son of lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom? He said that, and the Bodhisattva Mahasattvacharyāvatāra said this to the Venerable Shariputra: Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should look upon it like this: correctly and repeatedly behold those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness, without characteristic, unproduced, unceased, stainless, not without stain, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no visual form, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomena. There is no I element, and so on, up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element. There is no ignorance, no extinction of ignorance, up to and including no aging and death, and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and power. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Shariputra, therefore, because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom, the mind without obscuration and without fear, having completely passed beyond error to reach the end point of nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the two times also manifestly completely awaken to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment. It relies on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of the perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge, the unsurpassed mantra, the mantra unequal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering, should be known as true, since it is not false. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is the prayer, Tayata Om Gade Gade Paragade Sadasam Gade Bodhi Swaha. Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound perfection of wisdom like that. Then the Bhagavan arose from that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aryāvatāra, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that. It is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you have indicated. Even the Tathagatas rejoice. The Bhagavan, having thus spoken, the Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Aryāvatāra, those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, asuras, and Venerables, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan. So then we'll skip to 81, at the bottom, the prayer to line face the king. I prostrate to the gathering of the keys and the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space. By your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation, look after practitioners like a mother or child. Akasamara Sasidaras. Samara Sachadara Samaya Tayato Om Gade Gade Para Gade Parasan Gade Bodhi Swaha. By the teachings of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer hindrances be transformed, expelled, may all negative forces of force be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma. And may there be auspiciousness of the perfect happiness here right now. So then we'll skip to page 93. Page 93. The foundation of all good qualities, 93. The foundation of all good qualities is the common and perfect pure Guru, correct devotion to him is the good path. By clearly seeing this and applying great effort, please bless me to rely upon them with great respect. Understanding that the precious freedom of this rebirth is found only once, is greatly meaningful and is difficult to find again. Please bless me to generate the mind that unceasingly, day and night, takes its essence. This life is as impermanent as a water bubble. Remember how quickly it decays and death comes. After death, just like a shadow follows the body, the results of black and white karma follow. Finding firm and definite conviction in this, please bless me always to be careful, to abandon even the slightest negativities, and accomplish all virtuous deeds. Seeking samsara pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. Recognizing these shortcomings, please bless me to generate the strong wish for the bliss of liberation. Led by this pure thought, mindfulness, alertness, and great caution aroused, the root of the teachings is keeping the pradimoksha vows. Please bless me to accomplish this essential practice. Just as I have fallen into the sea of samsara, so have all mother migratory beings. Please bless me to see this trained supreme bodhicitta and bear the responsibility of freeing migratory beings. Even if I develop only bodhicitta, but I don't practice the three types of morality, I will not achieve enlightenment. With my clear recognition of this, please bless me to practice the Bodhisattva vows with great energy. Once I have passed by distractions to wrong objects and correctly analyze the meaning of reality, please bless me to generate quickly within my mind stream a unified path of calm abiding and special insight. Having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, please bless me to enter the holy gateway of the fortunate ones, the supreme Vajra vehicle. At that time, the basis of accomplishing the two attainments is keeping pure vows and samaya. As I have become firmly convinced of this, please bless me to protect these vows and pledges like my life. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages, the essence of the Vajrayana, by practicing with great energy, never giving up the four sessions, please bless me to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, may the Gurus who show the noble path and the spiritual friends who practice it have long lives. Please bless me to pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. In all my lives, never separated from perfect Gurus, may I enjoy the benefits of Dharma. By completing the qualities of this same path, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. So then turn the page to 98. Page 98. Well, for a short mandala. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with marrow, four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offering. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. O holy and perfect pure land, from the clouds of compassion that form in the skies of your Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma, precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create the distance of Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to explain the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create to explain the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. Okay, so let's pick up where we left off yesterday. So yesterday we were discussing the the way to meditate on bodhicitta, way to generate bodhicitta in our mind by meditating on these 11-step kind of meditation, sort of meditation with 11 steps for generating bodhicitta. So we reached the 5th step, 7th step yesterday. So today we'll continue from the 8th. But for those, because I know a few of you weren't here yesterday, so we'll just kind of review basically and try to think about each of those. So so the first step was equanimity, meditating on equanimity. So the main thing to reflect on here is that all sentient beings, so sentient beings, anyone with a mind, with consciousness, with a stream of consciousness, so that us and all other sentient beings are exactly the same in wishing for happiness, wishing for well-being, and wishing to be free from harm, wishing to be free from suffering. So not all us and all other sentient beings are exactly the same or are equal. But I forgot to mention, I was thinking this morning, I forgot to mention yesterday, which is very important actually for all of these meditations, is, well, usually when we, the reason for meditating on equanimity at first is because later when we generate love or compassion or the aspiration to become enlightened, to benefit all sentient beings, those attitudes, the attitude of love, for example, should be universal love, or so it means a sense of affection or wishing for the welfare of all sentient beings that doesn't exclude anyone, right? So if we don't meditate on equanimity first, then usually our concern is biased, meaning that we're more concerned about our family and friends and people we like, and then people we don't like, we're not really concerned about or even have, wish harm on them. And then people who we don't know, they're strangers, we sort of don't really think about, right? So in order to make it so that later when we generate love and compassion, that our love and compassion are not biased, then we meditate on equanimity first. So equanimity means basically trying to generate the same sense of concern for all sentient beings. So that's why the main thing to think about at the beginning is how all sentient beings, whether they're my friends or my enemies, they're just the same as me in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, and having a right to happiness and having a right not to experience suffering, and also the same as being having the potential to be fully enlightened or to be free from every form of suffering and have full enlightenment. So we're all the same in having that potential, having the right to those, and wishing for happiness, wishing not to be free from suffering. So usually when we meditate on equanimity, we actually visualize all sentient beings seated around us. So usually we begin with visualizing on our right, our male relatives and friends. So we begin with our father, maybe on our right, and then our uncles and grandfathers to our right, and our other male relatives to our right and behind us, and friends. And then on our left, our mother of this life, and then our grandmothers and aunts and other female family members and friends to our left and behind us. So those are kind of like the people we tend to automatically have concern for, naturally have concern for, our friends and family. And then usually visualize directly in front of us, seated towards us, people whom we have the most difficulty being concerned about or caring about. So people whom we might label antagonists, or whom we tend to dislike or become angry at or try to avoid. So we visualize those people seated directly in front of us, facing towards us, because they're the ones that we have probably the most kind of afflictive sort of emotions directed towards. So we want to deal with those afflictive emotions by bringing to mind those people. And they're the ones that it's most difficult to generate sort of compassionate concern for. So we visualize them being right in front of us, kind of demanding our attention. And then we visualize all other sentient beings, all the other humans and animals and so forth, seated around us as if on a vast plain. So, so the main thing we need to do is increase our sense of concern for the people we tend to dislike and people we tend to regard as strangers, or sort of unrelated to us, or that we tend to be unconcerned with. So, so the main way to do that again is to think about how all these sentient beings, they all suffer just like me, they aspire to happiness just like me. They all wish to be free from suffering, like I do, and they wish to increase and have more and more long-lasting, more stable, more profound well-being and happiness, just like I do. Right? So that was the first step, meditating on equanimity. And then the second step was thinking about how all sentient beings have been very kind to mothers, and especially mother, but also father, friends, in past lives. So in countless past lives, we've had countless number of mothers and fathers and siblings and dear friends, people who've been very kind to us. And it's not like, the person who's our mother in this life was always our mother in the past life. The person who is our mother in this life and our next life will again be our mother or our father or so forth. So in countless past lives, we've had countless people being incredibly kind to us as parents or siblings and teachers. So now when we look out in the world of sentient beings around us, we can't point to anyone and definitively say, like, that person was never incredibly kind to me, as kind as my mother of this life, in some past life. Right? So that becomes a basis for reducing this kind of aversion towards people we tend to have conflict with in this life, and increasing and reducing our sort of sense of being not concerned with strangers, but give us a sense of like connectedness with all sentient beings, and a reason for deeply caring about. I mean, one reason, not that there aren't other reasons, but one reason for deeply caring about and being concerned with the welfare of all sentient beings is that all sentient beings, in short, have been our mothers, and other, our parents and siblings and so forth in past lives. So that's the second thing, equanimity. And then thinking all sentient beings have been our mothers in past life. Then thinking about the kindness, their kindness in terms of being our parents, our mother, how kind they are to us. Giving us this very life, caring for us from the time that we were conceived, carrying us in the womb, and then caring for us as an infant, and raising us as a child, and giving us friendship, teaching us how to speak, how to use language, how to live in society. In short, everything that we enjoy in this life has all come about through other sentient beings. Right? So then, remembering that, generating a sense of gratitude towards our parents, gratitude towards our extended family, gratitude towards even strangers who allow us to have all the things that we enjoy in this life, from food and clothes and shelter, clean water, electricity, air, technology, everything we enjoy in this life, even our own thoughts and our language, ability to communicate, all comes about in dependence upon others. Right? So then the third step is generating a sense of gratitude towards other sentient beings. And then the fourth step is so remembering the kindness of other sentient beings and having a sense of gratitude, then converting that into a wish to repay the kindness of others. Because everything we've enjoyed has come about through the kindness of others, so then feeling a sense of obligation that I should use my life then to give something back to others, give something back to my parents, give something back to my family, give something back to the wider community and society and the whole human family and the whole family of sentient beings that I'm part of. Right? So generating a strong aspiration, a strong determination to use our life to bring benefit to others. Not only not to harm, of course not to harm, which is the opposite. And of course thinking that I should not harm other sentient beings, but I should use my life to benefit other sentient beings as much as I can. So that's the fourth step, repaying the kindness. And then the fifth step was thinking about, well, if we want to repay the kindness of others, thinking about, well, what are the main obstacles that I have to doing that? The main obstacles we have to using our life to benefit others is a selfish, self-centered concern. Right? So the fifth step was thinking about all the faults of self-cherishing. Meaning, here, self-cherishing doesn't mean just caring about yourself. It means like having an egoistic, self-centered attitude, at the exclusion of caring about others. Right? So, yesterday we discussed some of the faults of being self-centered, egoistic, self-centered attitude. So thinking about the faults of that attitude, how it leads us to be jealous, to be greedy, it leads us to act in ways that harm others out of disregard, out of not caring about, not being sensitive to, not being attentive to the feelings of others. Also, it leads us to be angry because we have very strong desires. Then when people act in a way that conflicts with what we want, and we easily get irritated, angry. Also leads us to feel alone and isolated and cut off from others because we're only thinking about our own problems, our own desires. Then we feel like we're in competition with others and feel kind of alone in the world. And then, easily leads to depression and sadness. Also, if we act in ways that harm others, then we generate regret. So that being self-centered also, it makes us more prone to act in ways that are harmful to others. So then that's the fifth, is thinking about all the faults of self-cherishing, self-centered, egoistic attitude. And then the sixth is thinking about the benefits and the opposite of that. So the benefits of cherishing others, right? So being more concerned about others. So primarily thinking about others first. Not that we totally ignore our own welfare and our own need for fulfillment and happiness and satisfaction, because if we're not happy ourselves, we can't do much to benefit others. But thinking about how beneficial it is to devote our life to working for the welfare of not only ourselves but all the other people whom have been so kind to us and who make happiness in our life possible. Right? So thinking about the benefits, in short, of generating an altruistic attitude. That people like, if we have an altruistic attitude, people like to be around us. We automatically don't engage in actions like lying or stealing that cause us regret and cause us to be ashamed of our own actions. But rather we protect, we're honest. We speak in a kind way. We have more patience and more tolerance, for when other people act in ways that are harmful. Other people feel safe around us because they don't feel like we're going to harm them. So they feel free from harm when they're around us. Also, it's easy just to have affection for others because we're not so much thinking about just ourselves, but when we're thinking naturally concerned about others, then we have affection for others, then naturally we feel happy. Also, we don't engage in actions that later we have regret for, and so it's easy to be totally kind of transparent, totally open about whatever we've done because we have nothing to hide. And then also caring about others, being altruistic, it gradually leads to the state of full enlightenment. So there's a famous verse by Shantideva in chapter 8 where he says, he talks about all the benefits. So we'll come to that several months later, but he talks about all the benefits of cherishing others. And he kind of sums it up saying, in short, look at, childish beings care only about themselves. Buddhas care solely about others. Look at the difference between them. So look at the difference between, a fully enlightened being whose existence is totally for the purpose of benefiting others, and compare that to a very childish, sort of selfish person who nobody trusts and nobody likes to be around, and themselves they're very unhappy and the mind is totally, full of confusion and turmoil. So just look at the difference between them, then decide what how you want to live your life, how you want to act. Right? So the fifth was looking at the faults of self-cherishing. The sixth, looking at the benefits of cherishing others. And then the seventh that we ended with last night was actually exchanging self and others. So that's the last thing we talked about last night. So actually exchanging self and others means, of course, we can't make ourselves others, and we can't make others us. It doesn't mean like physically exchanging self and others, but it means exchanging the focus of our concern, like exchanging the weight of our concern. So ordinarily, we're more concerned just about ourselves and less concerned about others. So we want to change that so that we're more concerned about others and less concerned exclusively about ourselves. So again, this doesn't mean like we're not concerned with our own welfare and happiness at all, because if we want to benefit others, we need to increase our spiritual development, our maturity, our inner resources, our will to benefit. We could say we need to increase. We have to have a very stable kind of mind with wisdom and compassion in order to benefit others. So in order to develop those, we need to focus on ourselves. It's not like we don't care about ourselves at all, but but it's more like in terms of thinking, well, what's the purpose of my life? Is the purpose of my life just to accomplish my own personal, private aims, and at the exclusion of thinking about others? Or is the purpose of my life more to contribute something to the welfare of others as well? Right? So the idea is that if we generate this selfless attitude, altruistic attitude, thinking to contribute something good to the world, then naturally we fulfill our own highest aims. Right? Those come about just by the way. Whereas if we're just thinking about me, I, what I want, and I want to be this great person, then actually we don't fulfill our own highest aims because we're limited to just this small sphere of thinking, this small sphere of concern of just about ourselves alone. So we stay this very small-minded person. Okay, so the seventh is actually exchanging self and others, where thinking about, so on the basis of thinking about all the faults of the self-centered attitude and the benefits of cherishing others, we actually try to just generate a sense of greater concern for others and less concern for ourselves. So we try to switch this, the focus of our concern from just ourselves alone to that of others. So in short, it's like we try to generate the attitude of seeing ourselves as a servant of all other sentient beings, as living for the benefit of all sentient beings. So that's where we ended yesterday. So maybe we spend a few minutes just kind of reflecting on that last seventh step, and then we'll move to the 8th, 9th, 10th, and the 11th steps this morning, hopefully before the break. So let's just take a few minutes, and just like yesterday, we were meditating for two or three minutes on each of these steps. So now just try to meditate as best you can with whatever understanding you have. Don't feel like, oh, I didn't understand everything you said, so that I don't know what to think about. Just whatever you did understand, just try to think about that, right? And be happy with that. And if you have questions, like I was saying yesterday, if you have questions like, is it really a good idea to try to do this exchange, this concern for self and others, then you can also just think about those questions, address your own questions in your meditation. But if you feel like, oh yeah, this sounds like a very good idea, then try to use your imagination, use your creativity to see, for me, what would it mean to exchange myself with others, right? So again, like visualize. You can visualize all sentient beings seated around you, in this way I described, with your father of this life and all your male family and friends on your right, your mother of this life, all your female family and friends on your left, and then those who are you feel like antagonize you the most, or you're most prone to become angry at, seated directly in front of you, and then all of the sentient beings seated around. So you can meditate on anything, so any of these 7 steps, but, for a few minutes. Okay, so 3 minutes. step. Yeah. So then the next step, actually there's kind of two steps that kind of go together. So the next step is, well, it's like this. So actually we're combining two different methods. So, yeah, especially, anyway. So the one method, there's two different methods of generating bodhicitta, right? There's a 7-step cause and effect method. 7 causes and 1 effect, so 7 steps. And then there's the method of exchanging self and others, which has 5 steps. So, so if you add 7 and 5 together, how much is that? 12, right? But the current method has 11 steps. So what happened? We lost one, right? So the reason is okay, so there's let's see, the 1, 2, 3. The 4th step from the method of exchanging self and others, there's 5 steps, right? So equalizing, or equanimity, which we did, right? This is the first. And then the faults of self-cherishing, which we did. The benefits, thinking about the benefits of cherishing others, which we did. That was 7, that was 6, and that was, what I actually, exchanging, right? So actually, yeah. So the equanimity, which we did, the faults of self-cherishing, the benefits of cherishing others, and then actually exchanging self and others, which is the 7th we just did. So then last is giving and taking, the practice of giving and taking. So that has, so this is called Tonglen in Tibetan. It's kind of well known. Tonglen, or practice of the giving and taking. So that has 2 parts. There's the giving and taking, right? So that's what I'm going to explain next. So, but first I'll explain how it's combined with the other 7-step method. So the giving is out of compassion. Basically, it's the mind of compassion. So seeing that other sentient beings have so much suffering, and then, so hold on. So first we've just exchanged self and others, right? So we've generated a sense of more concern for the welfare of others and less concern for ourselves. So seeing ourselves as a servant of, or as someone whose the purpose of our life is to work for the welfare of others. So based on that view, then compassion, seeing that others have suffering, then we generate the aspiration. So if only all the suffering of others could ripen upon me, and thereby they become free of it, right? So that's giving. So, that's taking. Thank you, that's taking. So taking all the suffering of others upon ourselves. So just, before I say more, it doesn't mean actually that all the suffering of others actually ripens on us, and we experience all the sicknesses there are in the world, we experience all the depression there is in the world, we experience all the, that would be quite totally unbearable, right? So it's rather that, actually for us to experience suffering, we have to create the cause for that. Because our suffering, all comes from negative karma that we've created, right? So for us to experience suffering means necessarily we've created negative karmas that then ripen upon us. If someone else creates negative karma, only they can experience the result. Nobody else can actually experience it. So in actual fact, we can't really just cause the suffering of others to ripen upon us. But it's by this way of thinking, then it's a way of greatly enhancing our compassion for others, right? And greatly enhancing the mind, the mind of courage that's willing to endure whatever hardship is necessary in order to accomplish the welfare of others, right? So it's a mental training more than an actual, we're actually taking on the suffering of others. So it's a way of training our own mind. But in short, though, this practice of giving and taking has 2 aspects. So the taking is basically meditating on the mind of compassion, be concerned, seeing the suffering and the dissatisfaction, the mental and physical hardships, problems that others experience, and then wishing that all of those may ripen upon me, is taking on all the suffering of others voluntarily. And then the giving is seeing that others, there's so much happiness that they don't have, right? And that how wonderful it would be if others could have more happiness and more well-being. So then we imagine giving away all of our own happiness and all of our own merits, the cause of happiness, giving away that to all others. So that's a meditation on love, loving kindness, or metta, right? So that 5th part of the method for generating bodhicitta, that is equalizing and exchanging self with others. That fifth step has two parts. So those two parts are subsumed into, or that fifth step is subsumed into the, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, well, 1, 2, 3, the fourth and fifth steps of the sevenfold cause and effect. So just go back to the sevenfold cause and effect method for genuine Bodhicitta has 7 steps. So the first is, equalizing is not there, right? So equalizing is added from another. So the first is, which we've gone through the first 3, are seeing all sentient beings as our mother, remembering the kindness of our mother, generating a sense to wish to repay the kindness. That's the first 3. Then the fourth is generating loving affection for all sentient beings, right? So we combine that loving affection with giving, from the giving and taking, and then that's the fourth. And then the fifth is generating compassion for all sentient beings. So that fifth step, compassion, is combined with taking, right, where we take on the suffering of all sentient beings. So that's why we lose that one step from the fivefold. We lose it because it's subsumed into the fourth and fifth of the others. Anyway, so now, okay, so now we'll meditate on, or we'll learn how to meditate on this giving and taking, or loving kindness and compassion, right? So, okay, so as I explained before, meditating on compassion first. So I explained yesterday, compassion is simply observing the the problems. So it's always a problem to translate. There's this word dukkha in Sanskrit, or dukkha in Pali, dukkha in Sanskrit. I think it's the same in Sanskrit and Pali. But anyway, dukkha. It's difficult to translate into English because it has a whole range of different connotations, right? So usually the most common translation is as suffering. But usually when we think of suffering, we think of feeling sick, feeling sad, feeling unhappy, physical pain, mental pain, disease, unpleasant feelings. But dukkha covers a lot more than just that, as I explained briefly yesterday. But so there's 3 levels of, you can think of 3 levels of suffering: very gross suffering, more subtle level of suffering, and most subtle levels of suffering. Right? So gross suffering is what we ordinarily think of as physical pain, physical discomfort, mental discomfort, unpleasant feelings of the body and mind, disease. So that even animals can identify. Then a more subtle level of suffering is basically called the suffering of change. Whereas it's like even most of the pleasant experiences we have, they don't last. They disappear. Or like I was looking at this. There's this new book out in the U.S. called "Why Buddhism is True" by this guy Robert Wright, who's an evolutionary psychologist. So evolutionary psychology is this new field of psychology. Yeah. So it's basically looking at how the process of evolution, like Darwinian evolution, how humans evolved from animals, and so how that process whereby it's the survival of the fittest, right? So it's like you can think about the purpose of each generation. I mean, in that kind of evolutionary way of looking at biology and the development of organisms, is that the purpose of it, well, the successful organism is conveying its genes into the next generation. Right? It's getting its genes into the next generation so that the genetic data of that organism goes on and flourishes, right? And eventually pushes out other forms of life, so it becomes a dominant species, right? So evolutionary biology is looking at how the process of evolution has shaped our psychology as humans. What are the kind of psychological characteristics that we have that are a result of this evolutionary process, and how, and also how that causes problems in our modern day life, because our modern day lifestyle are so radically different from the kind of lifestyle we had during during 99% of our process of evolution as a human species, right? So this guy Robert Wright, he's an evolutionary psychologist, but he's basically, and he published this book, Buddhism is True, right? So it's kind of strange. So he makes this nice point that, well, according to evolutionary psychology, also we continually experience suffering. So why I'm talking about this is because this more subtle level of suffering, right? We continually experience the suffering of being dissatisfied, right? So that's another way to translate dukkha is as dissatisfaction. Not only like physical or mental pain, but just dissatisfaction. So that's similar to the more, according to Buddhism, the more subtle level of suffering is that even we have pleasant experiences, they evaporate, they dissipate, they go away. Like we get food that we find very delicious, but then we eat it and it's gone. And even if we continue eating it, it becomes like kind of not very tasty and then even disgusting if we keep eating it. Or like, when we're sitting and we're tired of sitting, we feel kind of, sluggish and our legs hurt, and so we stand up for a while and walk around. But then after half an hour of walking around and standing, our feet start to hurt and our knees start to hurt, and we're tired, so we want to sit down again. And then we sit down again, then at first it feels like it's relief, feels comfortable, at ease, but actually that feeling of pleasantness is a reduction of the suffering of standing. So then, the suffering of sitting gradually increases. Actually, it starts right from the beginning, but after another hour of sitting, you start to feel the discomfort of sitting again, then you have to stand. So, or even like, it's the same thing with buying new things. All our friends have a very nice, great new Samsung iPhone, but we don't, so then we want that phone and we buy that phone, but then after, the first few months, it's great, it's so, cool, it has all these features, it takes photos so well, it's so fast. But then after a few months also, it becomes like, a drag. Maybe it breaks, or maybe, even if it works fine, it's not the newest, after a few years, it's not the newest model anymore, others do so much better. So at first, that there's a sense of satisfaction with that, but it doesn't last, it evaporates. So he has this nice term, it's called the evaporation of, satisfaction, the evaporation of gratification. So he's saying according to this evolutionary psychologist, this is like a built-in part of our characteristics, because for evolution that's really good. If you're just totally satisfied with the way things are, then you're not compelled to strive for more. And so you're not compelled to do things that cause your genes to pass into the next generation. So this guy's saying that that's a facet that is hardwired into us, to be dissatisfied with what we have. Because if we have dissatisfaction, then we're more likely to procreate and more likely to pass our genes into the next generation. Anyway, that I don't know, but that's kind of one of his reasons for saying that the Buddhist, what do you call it? A doctor makes a diagnosis. The Buddha's diagnosis of, is that right? Yeah. Description. The Buddhist description of our state of being as human beings, as being one of continual dissatisfaction is accurate, right? According to him. But according to him, whereas evolutionary psychology and psychology in general, it doesn't give a prescription for how to be, how to change that, how to eliminate that pervasive sense of dissatisfaction and generate a sense of that satisfaction. There's no prescription for that in psychology, whereas in Buddhism there's a prescription that works, right? Which is all the things we're talking about here. Like we've been talking about generating a sense of gratitude could be one way of reducing a sense of dissatisfaction. But why am I going? I'm going on a big tangent. Compassion. How to generate compassion, right? So to generate a deep sense of compassion means for ourselves and for others, means not only looking at the very obvious kinds of suffering, like physical, mental pain, discomfort, anguish, but looking at this even more subtle level of suffering, which is that even most of the things that bring us satisfaction, the satisfaction quickly evaporates. It doesn't last, right? So that's another kind of suffering. Is continually feeling like, in order to be fulfilled, I need more. I need something else. I need something better. And then there's a most subtle level of satisfaction. A most subtle level of suffering, which is that even if we're completely free of unpleasant feelings, we've even reduced our clinging and grasping for more, which is kind of a symptom of this. We don't have this clinging for pleasant feelings all the time. Always having to do something else to get new pleasant feelings to arise. We've also kind of generated a sense of detachment towards that. But still, as long as the seeds for potential future disaster, future sickness, death, future relationship problems, future unhappiness, in short, future rebirth in very suffering states. As long as the seeds, the potential for future forms of suffering are still there and ready to ripen, that's like a very subtle level of suffering. It's like we can't really be totally at ease in the peace that we enjoy because the possibility for that peace to be totally shattered are resting just below the surface, right? So that's a more subtle level of suffering. So thinking about all three of these levels of suffering, then it's easy. I mean, it's very easy to generate compassion when we see someone who's very sick, or see someone who's very lonely, or see someone who's very unhappy. But that's and that's good. There's no problem with that. But that's just kind of a surface level. It's like kind of an initial level of compassion. But then if you can even look at someone who it seems like everything is going well, everything is going well for them, and realize that deep down inside, well, you have to look at your own situation to see if it's true or not. But deep down inside, they might well have a sense of that they're not satisfied, that there's something missing in their life, that there's something they longing to be something more that they can't be, or longing to have something more that they can't have, or just recognizing that even having wealth or fame or a lot of praise heaped on us from others, those things, they don't last. They're very superficial kind of ways of they're superficial sources of well-being, and that as long as we rely exclusively on those for our joy, our pleasure in life, then that's a very unstable basis for well-being. So generating compassion at a deeper level, recognizing that so much of the ways that people seek happiness is also not entirely wise and not really reliable. So generating compassion on that level, and then even the deeper level of thinking, even for someone, even for ourselves, for others, when everything's going well, that the seeds of unhappiness are there, and generating compassion. How wonderful it would be if people were free from even that. How wonderful it would be if people could be even free from the possibility of future suffering. So this leads into a lot of other questions that we can talk about later. But for the time being, it's important to see that this is what we mean by compassion: looking at the problems, the suffering of ourselves and others, and then generating the mere wish, may they be free from that. Right? May they be free from that. So let's just spend a couple minutes just trying to meditate on that, compassion in that way. And then, we'll combine it with a visualization. Okay? So just take maybe just 1 minute, or 1.5 minutes. So try to think about, first, try to generate compassion for yourself for maybe 1 minute, and then think about others, and again visualize others around you, and generate compassion for at least 1 or 2 other people, another group of people. Okay, so begin. Meditate on compassion. Thinking, how may I or others be free from suffering? relax there. So now we'll continue meditating on compassion, but we'll combine it with the visualization. So this visualization comes from this practice of giving and taking, of tonglen. Yeah, in English, I don't know, somehow it's more comfortable to say giving and taking. But in Tibetan, tonglen, well actually it's the giving, it's the same, giving and taking. The tong comes first. But we'll meditate on taking first, in short. These two, the taking is imagining taking on the suffering of others out of compassion. And the giving is imagine giving away all of our possessions and our merits, all of our happiness to others out of love and affection. But those two, there's no specific order. You can do one first, one second. There's no, out of love and compassion, there's no order that you should meditate on compassion first and love second, or love first and compassion second. They can be, they're interchangeable. So the visualization is like this. So we're visualizing all sentient beings that are around us. The main visualization actually starts in our heart. So we visualize first self-cherishing. Within this egocentric, egoistic, very small-minded, selfish attitude. So we visualize that as like a black ball. Like a very thick, dense kind of black ball. Because it's with the recognition that is the source of all of our suffering. So it requires some background understanding, right? That this, which I don't have time to go into detail now, but the idea is that this selfish, self-centered, egoistic attitude is the source of all of our problems. Is the source of all of our suffering, the source of all of our anger, all of our greed, all of our jealousy, all of our paranoia, all of our worry. So that is the source of all our problems. So we visualize it as something kind of, and something it's in our heart, kind of deep buried in our heart. So this kind of small black ball at your heart, and then we're gonna, taking. So we then we'll generate thinking about the opposite, the benefits of cherishing others, and then thinking how wonderful it would be. So there's kind of, to compassion you can meditate with like 3 sort of levels of intensity, I guess. The first is like just thinking how wonderful it would be if all sentient beings were free from suffering. Just how nice that would be. If everybody I know was completely free from suffering, wouldn't that be great? Then the next level of intensity is thinking, may that happen. Not only leave it at, oh, what a nice idea, but may that actually be. May all sentient beings, so generating that intention, may all sentient beings, including myself and others, all my family members, all strangers, even my enemies, may they all be completely free from every form of suffering. It's a next, slightly more intense level of compassion. So here we want to generate primarily the most intense level of compassion, which is thinking, may I myself cause all sentient beings to be free from suffering. Without having to know what exactly we'd have to do or if we can do that, without thinking about those things, just generating this wish. May I myself be able to cause all sentient beings, myself and others, my friends, family, strangers, and even enemies, may I be able to cause them all to be completely free from suffering. Right? So try to generate on that, with that attitude, with that wish, then we visualize as we inhale, with each inhalation, imagine, so we start with one person, actually you start with yourself, and then extend to one family or friend, and then one stranger, and then gradually one enemy. So you start with yourself. So with each inhalation, you imagine as you inhale that the suffering, so the visualization is a little weird with yourself. If you could imagine like, maybe it's easier to visualize like this. Imagine you emanate a mirror image of you in front. Or you can imagine you're looking at a mirror. Or imagine there's an emanation of you, a mirror image of you sitting in front. And so as you inhale, you imagine taking on the suffering. So you've generated this wish. May I completely free myself from every form of suffering. So as you inhale, you imagine the suffering of yourself comes out in the form of like black soot or smoke. And then as it comes into you, it transforms into a lightning bolt or a powerful laser beam and destroys this self-cherishing at your heart. Right? So we're combining, be creative. There's no limits on what you can visualize or how creative you can be. So again, we visualize the self-cherishing, small-minded self-cherishing attitude, a self-centered attitude, which is the source of all the suffering at our heart. So, and the opposite of that, the antidote to that, what is able to destroy that is this caring about others. Caring about others can take two forms. So one is this compassion, wishing for the suffering of others, may it ripen upon me. So we start with ourselves, may all my suffering ripen upon me. And here we mean ripen upon me in the sense of ripen upon this, we throw it on this self-cherishing attitude. So as we imagine the suffering of others, we draw it in with it as we inhale, with our inhalation of breath. So imagine the suffering of others comes out of them in the form of like black soot or smoke. As it comes into our heart, it transforms into a lightning bolt or a powerful laser beam and strikes this self-cherishing at our heart and totally destroys it. And then we become free from self-cherishing. Right? So is the visualization kind of clear? Let's try it. We try it. Because it's good to start with yourself, but it's easy, the visualization works if you're visualizing someone outside, then it's coming into you. If you're coming from yourself, I don't know, you can imagine, I guess, the suffering is kind of remains in your mind or other parts of your body, and then as it comes into your heart, it turns into a lightning bolt or a laser beam and destroys the self-cherishing at your heart. And then you feel a sense of being released from this self-centered attitude. Right? So, yeah, please. Yeah, if you have any questions, please ask now. It's not clear? Okay. So, you imagine, okay, so just start with yourself, thinking whatever problems or suffering you have, just think of that. Then generate a wish, may I be free from those. May I be free from all those problems. So that's compassion. Then think, I'm going to do something to free myself from all my problems. Right? From all my suffering problems. So then imagine, as you inhale, imagine you draw all your suffering and problems and disease, discomfort, unhappiness. You draw it all into your heart. As it comes into your heart, it becomes laser beams, which then destroy this self-cherishing, self-centered attitude of your heart. The self-centered attitude of your heart, did you understand that? This very selfish attitude. Imagine that as like a little black ball in your heart, like a big black marble. Very dense and heavy and very kind of negative. All your negative aspects of your mind. Then imagine as you, out of compassion for yourself, as you inhale, imagine all your problems come into your heart and turn into little laser beams that then totally destroy this small self-centered attitude. Is it more clear? Okay. Any other questions about how to do this? Imagine this. Okay. Let's try it for a couple minutes. So first with regard to yourself, and then, so first just with regard to ourselves, and then I'll say something in regard to someone else. Okay. So first remember all the faults of the self-centered attitude, self-cherishing attitude, and visualize all these taking the form of like a little black ball in your heart. And then think of all the problems, all the forms of suffering, dissatisfaction that you have, and generate a sense of compassion. How wonderful it would be free if I could be free from this suffering. May I be free from this suffering. May I cause myself to be free from this suffering. So try to generate this intense compassion for yourself. So then, with each inhalation, you just breathe naturally. Each time you inhale, imagine all your suffering and problems, they come out from other parts of your body or mind. They come into your heart and turn into little laser beams that totally destroy this selfish attitude of your heart. gradually you become free from all those forms of suffering, and also you destroy this self-cherishing attitude at your heart. And then next, visualize someone close to you, someone in your family or friend whom you naturally have great affection for. Visualize them directly in front of you, and then think about whatever sufferings they have, any problems, dissatisfaction, disease, discomfort, harm that they experience, and generate a sense of compassion for them. Thinking, may they be free from suffering. May I myself do something to free them from suffering. May I cause them to be free from all these kinds of suffering that they have. And then again, with each inhalation, imagine that out of compassion you draw out, thinking, may their suffering ripen upon me so that they can be free from it. Then with each inhalation you imagine you draw out from them all the sufferings that they experience. They come out from them so that that person becomes free from them. They come out from them in the form of smoke or soot. And as they come into you, they turn into a laser, a powerful laser beam that destroys this self-cherishing at your heart. Selfishness at your heart. So gradually they become free from every form of suffering, and you totally destroy your self-centered attitude. So we can stop there.